All right, in this video, we're going to look at ways to evaluate information sources. The presentation is going to look at three different rubrics or evaluation tools that students can apply when they're looking at an information source and considering whether or not a source is appropriate for their academic projects. So these three tools we're going to be looking at were created by three different institutions, and there are a lot of tools out there, but they all look at similar things and ask similar questions of resources in order to determine whether or not something is reliable, scholarly, or a trustworthy source. So, how can we tell if we're looking at a reliable information source? The first rubric is the CARP test from Wichita State University Libraries, and that looks at currency, authority, accuracy, relevance, and purpose. The next one is the radar framework, and that looks at rationale, authority, date, accuracy, and relevance. And there's also, this is an abbreviation, but we'll call it the CAVA framework from Penn State University. And that stands for currency, authority, validity, audience, and point of view. Now, I know I went through those quickly, but I'll include links below the video where you can access PDF versions of each of these rubrics to print out and use on your own. So what do these frameworks have in common? First, currency or date, as it is in the radar framework, you want to look at when the information was published. Is currency appropriate for your topic? Are there rapid advancements in your field? Things like that. Has it been revised recently? And is the information obsolete? So even if something is current, is there even more recent research that disproves it or calls it into question? So those are all things you look at related to currency. Authority, you want to know where the authors are from, what are their credentials, who's the publisher, and whether or not other journals or other journal articles or other resources cite the resource you're looking at. For accuracy, which is referred to as validity in the CAVA framework, you want to just look at to see if there's evidence to support what's in the work. Is it peer-reviewed? Is there any obviously false information? Are there references, citations, things like that? Next, you want to look at relevance, which is also referred to as audience in the CAVA framework. And that's more subjective, and you just want to ask yourself if the source is right for you. Who's the audience of the source? Is it appropriately written? How does it compare to other works in the field? And is it written for, can you use the information in that resource for the audience that you're writing for? And finally, there's purpose, which is also referred to as rationale in radar or point of view in the CAVA framework. And you want to just look at why something was published, what are the author's intentions. You just want to be aware of bias, and you want to be aware of who sponsored the work to ensure there's no conflict of interest between the sponsor and whatever is in the work. We'll quickly touch on Wikipedia before we proceed. I know that can be kind of a common resource for a lot of undergraduates, but Wikipedia can be subject to vandalism. The information is always properly cited, and it sometimes includes false information. So really Wikipedia, kind of, if we're going back to look at our rubric, fails a lot of these. We don't know who the author is. We don't know the authority of that author. We don't know how accurate Wikipedia entries are. Again, of course, it can be useful for just like quick reference for everyday information needs. But if you're doing academic work, writing academic papers, you want to avoid Wikipedia. This screenshot here is just from a Wikipedia entry on Wikipedia vandalism, and you can see some examples of when Wikipedia has provided false information. So now we're going to take a quick look at a paper. All right, so we'll quickly run through each of these categories using a scientific article that I found through PubMed. So I found this through a database, and you should be looking for your journal articles through the databases that your library provides instead of just Googling it. That's one way to help ensure that you're getting reputable sources here. So just quickly, currency and date. When was it published? The publication date for this article is included here at the bottom of the page, March 22nd, 2016. So it is current. Authority, who are the authors, what are the credentials, and who published it. So you can see the author names here. Their affiliations are included underneath their names, Harvard University. Sometimes that information will be in the sidebar. It could be at the bottom of the article, but it should be present in the article. And this is published by PNAS, which is the Journal for the National Academy of Sciences, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. So, reputable authors, reputable journal. accuracy and validity. I picked this because it's a great example of a good scientific journal article. But you can just quickly scan and see figures, to support the author's conclusions. You can see some other data in the paper. You also want to ask if it's peer reviewed. That information can usually be found on the journal's website, kind of about the journal. Right here it says, every published paper is peer reviewed and has been approved by an NIS member. Sometimes the journals will have additional information about the peer review process at that journal. So this passes that test. The relevance or audience criteria, that's again subjective. Is this right for you? If you're writing a scientific paper, would this be appropriate? And who is the audience for this work? It's other scholars, other professionals. So finally, purpose, rationale, point of view. You're not going to find any bias, or you shouldn't find bias in a scientific journal article like this. You can look for the sponsors. They should have grant and funding information. In this article, the acknowledgement section. It just includes a note down here. This work was supported by the National Science Foundation. It has some grant information here. You just want to, be aware of funders if the work seems suspect. Overall, this is a great article, and you can proceed with it based on these criteria. Finally, I just want to quickly show an Oxford reference resource, just as kind of like a counterpoint to Wikipedia. So here, just quickly going through the 5 criteria. Currency, the date. You can see the print publication date, when it was published online, current online version. The publisher, authority, it's Oxford University Press, sterling reputation. Editor-in-chief, here's institution information, other works they've authored. Accuracy, again, because this publisher's reputation, you can be confident that they're publishing accurate materials. And bias, again, it's based on the publisher and the credentials of the editor-in-chief. So, all that information is available here. Who's writing this, when it's updated, and who is responsible for it. All those are things that you can't often find with a Wikipedia article. And just want to quickly finish up by emphasizing that this is a guide and it's not a guarantee that a resource is okay. Students need to use their own judgment. If they have questions, they should ask their instructor or a librarian. Some resources may be more appropriate for an assignment and might not fulfill all of these criteria. But it's a good guide, and it's good to keep these questions and different criteria in mind when you're looking at information resources. In an academic environment, but also in your everyday lives. Thank you.